So we met Ian through the Mighty Networks community. So Ian runs a Mighty Networks. He runs a YouTube channel teaching people how to master their composition in painting. He's a painter. He ran, Ian, I believe you said 25 years of workshops in person in France, just running these workshops for people. And then you kind of had this realization of, I need to start creating this. Why don't I start putting these videos on YouTube and seeing what happens? Can I reduce some of this in-person time and make it more of a virtual digital experience? And then that led to your community at Mighty Networks. And we also have a community at Mighty Networks, the Category Design Academy. We have only started it 2 years ago. We're having really small, like more intimate cohorts, and we're expanding it out slowly. But I believe you just launched a cohort recently, and you have around 900 or so people
988.
In your latest. Oh,
Wow.
so almost 1,000 people in your cohort. So we would love to maybe just start off with tell us a little bit about the new cohort and what you're teaching them and how you run it, and then we can dig a little bit deeper into the backstory and do a little bit of reverse engineering there.
Well, there's two things there. Is that you're talking about a community, I'm assuming, for people that are actually taking the course, right?
Yeah, it's a
Taking the
little bit of both.
academy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have, well, I guess we could say two communities. I have a course, the 988 people, and they are a cohort in the course. There's 3 courses: drawing, brushwork, color. And when it's over, then there's a community that they can join, because one of the sort of central functions that I try to get them to engage with is critiquing work. And, some of the people are beginning drawings, and you're saying, you want me to critique somebody else's work, not on your life, right? But the only way you'll ever learn how to actually judge your own work is to sort of start to actively critique, perhaps poorly at first, because it's a learned skill. So by the time these people have finished 3 courses, they're pretty sophisticated at it. And they now have, I hardly ever go to that community anymore. It's just self-perpetuating, and they help each other with this critique thing. Like, I love that painting, but I think that thing over in the left-hand side is distracting me. And they can help each other, because you can sit in your studio looking at a painting knowing it's not working, and you just can't figure out what it is, right? So that community has been functional for them. And I pulled out of it, I'd say about 6 months ago. I was giving monthly talks, and I'm just currently making my last, maybe forever, YouTube video this week. It'll go out at the beginning of April. I'm pulling back from all these pieces that just demand so much. It's not so much that making a video takes a lot of time. It's that it just takes an endless thought process of keeping these ideas rolling week after week after month like that. And I think I said to you, Katrina, the main problem I had with my business is, you guys, I'm going to make the assumption. Like, I see your guitars, and so maybe, Chris, you've got this idea that really I'd like to be in my band. But let's take that one aside. I'm a painter first, and I'm not a teacher first, at least in my own mind. And I made a living as a painter, selling my paintings, and I would just do these short workshops in Provence in the south of France. And then when I got into this whole thing of teaching online, it became all consuming, because my marketing strategy was YouTube, and that then becomes completely engaging. And then I'm teaching the courses, and everything in my artistic kind of desire gets funneled into creating YouTube's, ideas, or making paintings that I know isn't a total stretch for me, but they're going to serve the function of a YouTube video, as opposed to, well, what do I want to explore as a painter? So that's been this dichotomy since the day I started online stuff. And that's why I'm pulling out of YouTube, why I stepped out of the community. And this cohort, it's sort of a long way around on this question, but the cohort itself, I'm just teaching it now. And then the second part will be in September, and the third part will be in January. And I have live weekly calls every week with that group. I'm answering emails and questions and so on like that. But it's the last time I'm going to do that too. I'm going completely evergreen, probably asymmetric learning. After that, who knows whether anyone will come. But the point is, if I don't get time in the studio, something else is going to burst, you know? Because if somebody, what I'd like actually is, and this is sort of the big cautionary tale that I'd say I could have learned for myself, is I would like to start exploring my own direction because I have a huge email list now, right? And I have to do something. Well, I can't just abandon them. And I would really like to find a way to take my creative direction and the content and make it one thing. I'm not creating content anymore. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. Whereas if I'm doing a painting, I know that I can make it work with a theme and a thumbnail and everything in mind. That's not really my own work anymore, right? So that's kind of my main thrust going forward. Can I find something that is so compellingly engaging for myself and tangentially engaging for other people?
So Ian, I have to ask because so my eldest daughter Mia is a junior in college and she wants to be an animator. Um, so she's studying visual effects and animation, and I'm a guy that was a growth strategy consultant for 30 years, and I have no artistic eye. I was a music guy, but not an artistic guy. So I'm at a loss of how to help her. But I'm so curious about. I mean, you're falling back in love with your own painting and wanting to explore that direction, and yet you've built this amazing business as an entrepreneur. Like, I don't quite understand. Like, did that just kind of naturally? Were you born with it? Did it emerge from painting? Was it a tangent? Like, how did those two things come together? Because I often don't think about the artistry and economic side naturally blending together.
Right.
So I'm curious, like, where did this skill set come from as an entrepreneur?
Well, when I taught those workshops, I taught them in the south of France. And as Katrina said, I did them for 25 years. And by the end, I was getting real tired of it. I never found a soul that was like feeling my pain for how tired I am of getting these workshops in the south of France. But you do anything for 25 years, right? You sort of figure, okay, I've got that. But one of the things about teaching those workshops, which I didn't realize so much, because I knew lots of other people teaching workshops, and they would just log, what's the word? Log, there's a word there. It doesn't glob onto someone who does the administration. So they choose the site. They get the students there. You might have some of your own students, and you just show up and you're paid as the instructor.
And are
And
these
you
like
get
young French students? Is it like
no, they were mainly Americans, North Americans. I
Americans?
mean, I get some Europeans, but they were mainly North Americans because they're honestly the people with enough extra cash to go and do things like that.
Are they like expats that are working in the south of France and they're
No,
just kind
no,
of
they'd all
just
fly over.
It's like a destination workshop, right?
Yeah,
It's like
oh,
exactly
I
I'm gonna
that.
get
go
it. I
there
get
for
it.
You
a
know,
week.
yeah,
I'm gonna
it's
do my
10
painting.
days. Yeah, it's 10 days. I work them like a professional painter, 4 hours of painting in the morning, 4 hours in the
Wow.
afternoon, and then some great wine in the evening. Food was great. The landscape was fantastic. It was a really good workshop. But the thing that I recognized as the years went by is that I had, well, to your point, an entrepreneurial spirit. I realized, well, the person that makes the money is the administrator, not the teacher. So I figured better be both. That was sort of the foundation of it. And so the problem with being the administrator is like you could have something like 9/11 come up and no one wants to get on an airplane and all your deposits are down the drain and you're screwed. So there is an element to so I suppose that's one skill set, willing to take that risk, which I didn't really even particularly realize, but it definitely was something. And also the ability to organize all the pieces where I remember having dinner one time with these people that were guides at the highest end, a company called Travco, I think it was like the highest end kind of destination travel on private jets and, $40,000 like that. And we were talking about what it's like to run, these things, and we realized, oh, we're in exactly the same business. You just have to anticipate all the problems 3 steps ahead and be there and make sure it's all happens so nothing goes wrong. And I remember one time this woman saying she went on this workshop, and the person who was the workshop leader called her in the airport and said, "Look, I haven't made my flight. Can you meet everybody at the airport?" This was like in Rome or something, and it was just the level of chaos. You just realize, okay, there's a certain skill set that I definitely had and that was. But I'll tell you and it sort of gets to your category. I was looking. I have this book, by the way. I bought it years ago. I mean, it wasn't like I bought it in order to read something before the call. But Category Pirates is really interesting because if you go to an art store, a bookstore, and there's a big section of art books, you'll see there's books on how to do watercolor and how to do portraits and how to do oil and how to do landscape and still life and abstract and all these things. But you will not find a section on composition. And yet it's like, supposing we were talking about building homes and we were really excited about kitchen counters and we were really excited about drapes and what's the siding going to be. But if you haven't thought about the foundation of your home, nothing's going to happen. Doesn't matter. I mean, the parallel is exactly the same, really, right? Put in the foundation, you can build a building. Put in the compositional structure, you can make a painting work. Without the compositional structure, you're just getting halfway through the painting and then flailing and wondering and thinking, oh, I'm the person with the problem. I'm a lousy artist. Well, that's my category. And I sold 60,000 books on my book, Mastering Composition, which just people realize if they've been painting for a little while, oh yeah, that's my problem. And yet it's a category that nobody else really covers. I'm in a category of my own. And it seems so self-evident. I don't know how I found it. It was just, I guess I'm teaching these workshops and thinking, I got to say something. I mean,
Can I also say, Ian, I just want to comment, like, I don't know what it is. I'm curious, Kat and Christopher, like, I love listening to you. You have an amazing voice and engaging cadence, and like, you're a great speaker. Obviously 25 years of workshops will do that. But like, I as a non-art person, like, I understand kind of 40% of what you're talking about in composition, but I'm like, I would sign up for the class to listen to you. But then I'm also hearing sometimes doing a lot of public speaking can help you become a great writer. Like, you have to be a great writer to sell 60,000 copies of a book. But like, it's just kind of so fascinating how your skill set, kind of one skill. We just kind of talked with another pirate of ours, Danny Bauer. One superpower begets another superpower. So you have a painting superpower, leads to an entrepreneurial administrative superpower, leads to a public speaking superpower as you do the workshop, leads to a writing superpower, leads to a YouTube superpower. These are all things
it's a hell of a Venn diagram, and it's a hell of a unique, if you will, integrated superpower that makes you a category of one.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, I was thinking about it before. I was thinking about this point of composition and category just because we were having our conversation. I hadn't thought of it before. But it's quite right. I mean, whether each one of those skills came naturally or not, I don't know, but they all just fed into the thing, and it's like, when somebody isn't that good at something and they're sort of trying to boast about it, you feel the boast, right? I know I teach well. It's not an arrogant thing to say. It's that I can create these conceptual ideas that people say, oh, I see. I've been hearing about that for years. I never had an idea what that was about, right? And it's just there. And I do these, this is the last year I'm going to be doing live calls, and people are like, oh, no, I'm not doing live calls. Because just like you're saying, people enjoy it. And I always have something, I lace it with philosophy and other painters and quotes. So it's rich, I don't know, maybe I could do something with that. But again, honestly, the idea of creating, I hate the word content in a way. I mean, it's what we all make, but it just sounds so mercenary in a way. And I don't know a better word for it.
Because legendary awesomeness.
Well, yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful maybe, but you know what I'm saying is, like, there's something about the idea of, I got to get content, sounds so tedious and mercenary, as opposed to, I have something to share with you.
So as an education,
sorry, Katrina, go ahead.
Chris. I was just going to say, it's more about education versus content, right?
Right.
It's the fuel for the education. But go ahead, Christopher. I can tell your brain is swizzling over there. So,
well, there's a couple of things swizzling around, but I want to clarify something. Ian, do I detect some Canadian in your speaking?
Yes, sir.
I was born and raised in Montreal. Where are you from?
Toronto.
I was born and raised in Montreal, lived in Toronto for years
yeah.
before I moved to the excited States.
Yeah.
So I
Happy
thought
with that choice now or what?
Actually, we could have the conversation. I'm as happy about that choice or more now than ever, but that's probably
a different conversation.
That's a different conversation. Maybe not for the reasons you might expect. Also, as a side note, if you were ever so compelled, because, well, let me ask a question first. Could you sort of unpack a little about what the connection you see between artistic painting composition and category?
Well, in a sense, I think I mentioned it. I thought maybe I wasn't clear, but when we think of a category, we think of something that, I mean, okay, I'm going to try to say something here, and you've been thinking about it for years, but I don't know if you ever use that idea of a moat. You know that, remember, it's like a business idea of a moat, right? I'm not sure if you sort of, there's disadvantages of that metaphor maybe in category because it's not a thing that you see. I don't know, but the idea that you've got something that to cross over into my category, somebody's going to have to do something pretty similar, and people are going to say, "Oh, he's doing what he did," right? So if you look at any painting, there's a famous book by a guy named Robert Henry, and he was an art teacher. It's called The Art Spirit. And pretty much everybody who's, an artist has read it. And he has a line in there. He said, all good art is composition. Well, you cannot get a better category definition of what I'm teaching than that. And so,
Ian, just so for a Luddite like me, composition meaning you like I've heard of people composing a photograph, right? Like you have a picture in your mind, you're deciding what the main thrust of it is and what's not. I mean, like how can you do it a very, very basic, what is composition?
So when you think of most people beginning to paint, they think that what they're painting is the subject, that there's a barn or there's a vase with some flowers in it. They think that's what they're painting. But in fact, what you learn as you get better is you're not actually painting the objects. They're the vehicle. I mean, they have to exist. But what you're painting is light. What you're painting is the drama of design. Big shapes of light and dark against small shapes, simple against complex, like that. And that's what you're trying to structure. That's the structure. And it usually sits within an armature. Something has to engage you want to engage the whole picture plane. We see so many images now. We don't even think about how many images we see all day long. And you realize if you make a painting, you're competing with all those images. You've got to do something so engaging that somebody says, whoa, because painting. I mean, and the other thing, this isn't exactly answering your question, but nobody needs our paintings, right? The museums are full of them, full of great paintings. People way better than me, right? Titian and Rembrandt and Velázquez, the world doesn't need my paintings. And all the people that are making paintings in my courses, we don't need their paintings either. The reason for doing it is because of what you learn about yourself and your relationship to the world. And that's what you're feeding. And if your results sometimes actually turn out pretty well, it's pretty gratifying because you're starting to share what you see with other people. But you're not going to share much of anything if you're just copying what you're looking at in terms of that vase and those flowers, so it kind of looks the same, but a little bit crappier because you're not a great painter. But you've seen, I'm sure, paintings that have not relied on extraordinary technical facility and detail that you said, oh my God, will you look at that? Because it somehow connected you emotionally. It's like if you hear a beginning of a symphony and there's like boom, 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 and you're pulled in. It's completely abstract, right? It's not like there's no detail, there's no subject. You're just sucked in because of that chord progression, the design of that chord progression. That's basically what composition is. It pulls you into the chord progression of light and dark shapes on a picture plane that says, oh God, will you look at that?
I love it. Can I replay it back? You're composing engagement. You're composing a gravitational pull of something that's grabbing your attention, and through that, as you said, you're not painting the vase. You're painting some sort of contrast, or like in Snow Leopard, as you bought, we talked about the great titles are non-obvious and obvious, and that pairing together is captivating. And it's just, and it stops you in your tracks, and that's what you're trying to. The world doesn't need another book, just like it doesn't need another painting. But if you can find the thing that is the non-obvious contrast that captures you, and that through that, not only will you get engagement and attention, you will probably discover something about yourself that you didn't realize that other people want to connect with. So there's kind of this, the composition itself is engagement, self-discovery, and connection. I don't know if that's...
No, that's great. Because what it isn't is I have to be original. I have to do something unique. I mean, that whole thing is a complete mugs game in terms of connecting to yourself, because you're looking over your shoulder all the time, right?
It's a comparison game.
Yeah, because
right?
the best things really just come, you might be the 10,000th person or the 10 millionth person to paint a portrait, but you saw that person this time and it is unique. Not because it's new, it's because it was seen, using the word see, meaning, idea. I think the root of the word idea comes from the Indo-European word for to see, right? I mean, it's like you're seeing this thing, you're gripping it and getting enough of it on the page. It's always disappointing, the amount. I mean, you write books, right? You realize I got this idea for a book, and then you get the finished product and you realize, all right, it's pretty good, but there's always that difference between your vision and the execution. And every painter has that. And occasionally, maybe, once every couple of years, something comes out as well as you could imagine. But, if the idea is good enough, even with that slippage, you've still got something like bingo, you nailed it. I don't know.
What you're saying, Ian, reminds me of something. One of my heroes is a guy named Rick Rubin. He's a music producer.
Yeah. I read his book.
Okay, so you know all about him, and he's one of the godfathers of hip hop, and he's done Metallica, and I mean the greatest, so many great things. And one of the things I heard him on a podcast a little bit ago, and he was talking about this exact thing in the context of, where should artists sort of situate themselves when they're going to create stuff. And his point of view is you should ignore your audience. You should ignore the external world. You should ignore your past, comparisons, all that stuff. The greatest thing an artist can do in our world, a creator can do, creator capitalist can do, is do something that is the most real, the most true to them. And that is the essence of uniqueness, as opposed to this comparison lens. And his POV that if you are true to what it is, your vision for the painting or for the song or for whatever it is, do that and sort of let the cards fall where they may. And so there's an element of that I'm hearing, or am I?
Well, it makes me think of a book called The Gift by Lewis Hyde. Do you know that book? So
Yes.
He talks about two economies, right? There's the gift economy and there's the market economy. And it's basically your point there. In the gift economy, you're in the studio and you're making this work completely self-referential, let's say. I mean, obviously there's influences, but you're doing it within that. When you've finished, then it might enter the market economy. But if you confuse the two while you're making it,
Magic.
And, we hear this a lot in our world. And I heard it, we heard it the whole way through when we started our podcast. It's too late for podcasts. Nobody's going to listen to an hour plus long podcast of a bunch of business people talking. That's too many. It's done. Well, that was 7 years ago. We have a top 0.5% podcast. When we started our newsletter, same thing. The best time to start a newsletter was 8 years ago, and it's too late.
It's too long.
It's too long. Nobody's going to read 5,000 words, 3,000 words. Business people are busy. This is a ridiculous thing. Okay, we have a top 0.5% Substack newsletter, and on and on and on. And the way I think about it, I think about it as music. I grew up as a musician, surrounded by musicians. And it's like, well, if I think about a couple of my favorite artists over the last handful of years, people like Adele or Chris Stapleton or this band Whiskey Myers, or more recently, this solo artist named Shabuzi, who I've fallen in love with. So you think about any of those people, and they write love songs. Everybody writes love songs. You say, well, hey, listen, Paul McCartney and the Beatles. Paul McCartney is the greatest songwriter that ever lived. Won all the awards. Nobody's going to touch the Beatles. Nobody's going to get anywhere near Paul. So Adele, you should just F off and go do something else. We don't need another love song. And then the world would have been robbed of all of that legendary. And it turns out we need way more love songs, and we need way more motivational songs, and we need way more sad songs, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Well, it's funny. I just making this YouTube video now, and one of the pieces in it is I'm sort of describing this structure for making paintings, because I'm going to leave you with a number one tip because I'm out. And I wanted to have a clip of Ed Sheehan on Howard Stern playing 4-chord progression, exactly the same 4-chord over and over and over, and you realize, oh no, the creative constraint of being held in like that is only limiting if you don't expand it. And if you've got that little thing, you can just bring richness and you can breathe life into it over and over. So
yes,
to your point about pop songs, I mean, they just, I remember, I can't even remember who it was, somebody like a jazz musician or something, just saying, I don't know how Stevie Wonder does it. It's like, you may not like pop music, you might think, no, everything's got to be, classical or jazz or something like that, but dang, hard to do. And I wrote a book called Creative Authenticity, which I wrote before Mastering Composition, and I self-published it. And I had a guy who's sort of a self-publishing guru, sort of, he's got all these different programs that he can check how things are selling. And he's like, what? You don't market this book? He had never seen anything like it. Like 15, 20 years later, it's still selling by word of mouth, over 25,000 copies. It just moves on its own. But central to that, if I can remember what I was talking about, that was central to that, I've now forgotten. I was leading through the book to an important point.
And it was really important at the time. Listen, I know I see zebras in my mind all the time, and I don't know what the hell I was talking about. Fully.
I just want you to know, I didn't segue to the book to promote the book. I had a very specific through line.
What was it about creative authenticity that was firing in your brain, Ian?
Well, one of the points within the book, I suspect, but I can't remember what it was now.
Can I ask you something?
Sorry.
Maybe it'll come back to you. Is you don't have to share anything you're not comfortable with, but 25 years of doing painting workshops in Provence, like, sounds like a pretty good life. Like, so I mean, I assume it was, you were happy with it, financially did well, obviously you grew to want to do other things, which led to everything else, the books, YouTube, and the courses and the community. But like, I'm trying to understand, we have this concept of creator capitalists, this four sources of capital: financial capital, some money, savings, all that kind of stuff; reputation capital. So what, Ian is known for certain things, his paintings, if you have to be a certain level of painter for people to want to learn from you. Relationship capital, the people your advocates, the people who won't lie to you, all that kind of stuff. And then intellectual capital, which composition, your books are obvious. Like you have intellectual capital coming out the wazoo. Everything you say, I'm like, oh, you should probably write a book. And then you're like, oh yeah, you probably did write a book about it. So you have all of this stuff, but I'm trying to understand. And I don't think you were kind of saying that it wasn't like intentional that the 25 years would kind of build all of this, but it's very clear that 2.5 decades, you probably have so many people that you've encountered that would be like, oh, whatever Ian puts out, I'm going to buy. So huge relationship capital that way. Your reputation capital as a painter, you had established for you to do that, but as an educator, as a speaker, like all of that was being built out, right? And then, but I'm trying to also get a feel for like it. I assume it wasn't drudgery and pain and suffering to do the 25 years of workshops, but you tell us if that was the case. But like, because I just imagine the starving artist mindset, and your story seems very, very different than that. But you had kind of like you picked a great comedian doing set after set after set in the comedy clubs to very small audiences, and then Chappelle has a $60 million Netflix deal after that. Like, help me understand the 25 years. Like, what was that like? And as you were building things, compared to the life that you have now, as with all these different entities and digital properties that kind of make you money on the side.
Well, the two workshops were two 10-day workshops. Plus, I was maybe over in France for 3 months until I got married. I mean, I got married 15 years ago, and I didn't spend as long over there. I'd come back afterward, and then usually I do a workshop or two in the fall too, like in Maine or Taos or New Mexico or someplace like that. And that pretty much paid for everything that I needed for the rest of the year. And so there's a sense of coming into the studio, of being able to potter, right? To potter around like it's not necessarily all of your time is functionally like got to get the cane. I mean, I remember this woman, I made a video, and I was talking on the video because you needed a context for understanding composition. And she made this comment, like, I guess she'd bought the video or something, and she's saying, demonstration videos should all be brush on the canvas. And I'm thinking, lady, if you think painting is all about brush on the canvas, you're missing the biggest piece of all. It's like Ansel Adams talking about the most important piece of equipment is the piece is 12 inches behind the camera, right? Now, he had a big camera. Now it would be 6 inches behind the camera, but it's up here. And that thing is not about brush on the canvas. And the whole point of compositional structure is you figure out what you're seeing first and figure that out so that before you get brushed the canvas. So in terms of all those years, well, okay, if you do anything, at a certain point, when you start, you're learning so much, right? Trying to put all these pieces together. And you've got a skill set for it, and you can do it, or you don't have a skill set for it, and you got to get somebody to help you, or it's taking up too much time and you need someone to help you. So you sort of build up from being a person of one to, getting an operations manager and having teaching assistants and a web guy and an editing. Well, actually, I still do all the editing, but all this stuff like that. So you build it up. So when I was teaching those workshops, I had to get an assistant each year. I had to figure out locations and go and travel and figure them out like that. So I was having to figure out all these pieces, but I think most of the pieces came to me easily enough that it wasn't like I definitely needed somebody in order to make this business grow. And I wasn't trying to make it grow very big, right? I didn't want it bigger. And the reason I stopped actually wasn't because I was tired of it. I was tired of it. But my wife said, if you roll a van over there and you kill two people, I mean, it's sort of a dreadful thought, we're going to lose our house. And there's no amount of money you're making on this workshop that's worth losing our house. And so that was the year before COVID. And I realized, so I drove the van like I was 95 years old, that workshop, because it was already organized. And I asked everybody on that workshop, look, I want to create a course. Can I pilot it with you? And I made that first draft of the course right there. Right after I had that course, and then I launched the course. I spent the time trying to figure. I joined a coaching program in Montreal that had sort of a pretty robust coaching program for building up businesses. And the advantage, of course, I had a proven concept with Mastering Composition, both the title and the book. I knew it could work. So that just forced me into the online world. And I started the YouTube videos. I figured, I don't know anything about advertising, but I read Seth Godin. He had a course on Udemy on modern marketing. And I must have taken 50 pages of notes and realized, the sum of it is just give them everything. Don't hold anything back. Give them everything. And so I just started creating YouTube videos with telling them as much as I possibly could on any given video, because it's not a strategic plan. It's all, the subjects are all over the place week by week. You can't really follow it and get anywhere, but they're getting the sense like, boy, this guy really is telling me the way it is. So when I launched the first course, which was April 2020, which was kind of, timely in terms of COVID, there were people sitting around what to do. And I had figured, God, if I get 50 people, I'll be lucky. I had 60 people sign up in 2 hours, and I phoned the coach. What do I do? What do I do? Just close the door, tell them you're going to offer it again in 3 months, and then open the door again. And that whole group was filled up, and another 60 people in the next day or so. And I knew that I had a business, right? I knew I had a business. And then it was just a question of, continuing to grow YouTube. And YouTube is a weird thing because I can't figure the algorithms out. I just make the YouTube videos. I don't try to get ahead of it when anybody's trying to tell you what to do. But every now and again, somebody, I guess, would recommend it, and it would just jump 10,000 people or 20,000 people. So by the time I launched the courses again, I had like 80,000. I mean, I've got 210,000 followers now, right? But you get these new people coming in, and then I have a week of videos telling what my course is about, and people sign up. It was just, I mean, you're sort of asking me like what happened in those 25 years. I don't know if I actually answered your question, but those were sort of the events.
Yeah.
They were the events.
It's so fascinating.
It was the precursor to the course, right? You were testing the idea. You knew it worked. You knew how to teach. You basically were building all of the content that you then ultimately put into, I would assume at least there's pretty similar overlap for your YouTube videos and then into your course.
Yeah.
You were
and talking about it. And the thing is, if you talk about a subject for 25 years, you start off with a lecture. Well, that lecture gets refined and refined and refined, and you're taking main points and putting secondary points that you've sort of developed over the years mentally, and then you're coming up to people with specific problems, and you're solving those problems for them over and over and over, year after year after year. It becomes clear what the main problems are. I mean, to your point, Eddie, that's true. 25 years gave me a huge backlog of ideas of what are the problems.
Ian, there's a pastor in New York. He's passed recently, Tim Keller, and he's written tons of books, but very recently, later in life, right? And it became pretty obvious, like, how is the guy cranking out book after book, and they're all bestsellers? Like, he's got 2-3 decades of sermons every Sunday that he has a backlog of, and getting better at telling the same things and sharper and all that kind of content. And it was just like, it's kind of fascinating to hear. There's really nothing wasted in life at some level. Like, you're committed to the craft, you're committed to serving the, your people that were coming to the course. I bet you, when you went at COVID, a lot of the people buying the course in your book are people who have previously bought your workshop, is my guess. Is, all of your own set of super consumers with that. You were building, you have 210,000 followers because you had 25 years of people building word of mouth. Like, hey, this Ian guy knows what he's talking about. It's super fun. Yeah, the food is great, and all that kind of stuff, right? And he doesn't roll the van, so
it was really
don't roll the van, Ian.
Well,
don't roll the van.
Before I did, But my wife's a painter also, and she just had an exhibition at a museum, right? She has a museum show, solo museum show up in Santa Paula, and we had the opening 2 weeks ago, and it was all about her, obviously. But I'm there.
Congratulations!
Oh no, it was a huge accomplishment, and I was there, and these people came up to me and said, and recognized me, right? I didn't know who they were. They said, I took your courses last year. Because, I mean, with 700, 800, it's just all in a Zoom call. I don't know who's there. I mean, some people sort of come out of the woodwork, and you sort of recognize their name, and you've answered a few questions. But this person, I didn't know who they were. And they said, you changed my life. And it wasn't that, there was about 4 people that said that during that evening while we were there. And I mean, it's obviously a very moving thing to experience, but you realize with art, it's something that people, for the most part, have been dying to do all their life. And, if it's a woman if it's man or woman, you're raising families, you've got your business, and there isn't time. And my demographic, I'm pretty clear on, it's like the younger end is 55. It's more like 60, 65 up to 80. and they're retired and they want to do this thing they've always wanted to do. And they're finally getting a way to kind of see it from the bottom up, as opposed to everybody else sort of teaches it from the top down, and it's all parts. And this is kind of coming from the bottom up, and it's all holding together, and they're kind of getting a picture, and they're saying that I'm connecting to this thing I've always wanted to do. And they're sort of saying, I've got a happy retirement. It feels, on those moments, I can tell you, it feels like a very worthwhile project.
I don't know if you'll be offended by this, Ian, but when you talk about everyone wants to be an artist, it just makes me think of the Step Brothers quote of "Don't lose your dinosaur." I don't know if you've seen the movies. Every kid wants to be a dinosaur, and then somehow I forgot how to be a dinosaur because my dad said you got to get a real job and get out, and so I went to med school, and I don't know how to be. Anyway, but like
but it's so true. I mean, my dad was a painter.
Right? We start with crayons, don't we?
Well, you see, it's like, I remember somebody saying that their kid was drawing like this, and somebody was saying something about learning to draw, and he was like, "What do you mean learning to draw? A 5-year-old, it would be meaningless, right? Though that sense of how the expression comes out. As you get older, the sophistication of what you want to say might get harder, and you've got to spend some time on it. But the idea that talent, I mean, you don't need talent to learn to paint. You just need practice. I mean, some are going to be better than others, obviously, but it's not about talent.
I'd be curious, Ian. So I'm a consumer of, let's call it content, for lack of a better word, about legendary creators in many forms, right? So one of my favorite shows is Beat Bobby Flay. It's really fun. The food's fun, and it's great. And we all know that the chef world has exploded over the last, particularly 10 years, but 20. And another one of my favorite shows is a show called Ink Master. I have lots of tattoos.
I guess we weren't supposed to hear about that show.
Bye, Christopher. Maybe he'll come back.
He'll come back.
We'll see. But his camera might have stopped. I think I can imagine what he's getting at. And one of the thorough lines that we talk about a lot at Category Pirates is everybody is meant to create in some capacity. It's our natural state as human beings. And whether or not your canvas is a social media post, it's painting, it's YouTube videos, it's books, it's this, it's that. Like in our world, we kind of approach, you are a creator, even if you're a business person, even if you're like Eddie and you were a consultant for years, you still have this innate ability to create. So I'm kind of curious if you see that, obviously probably in your students, because they've wanted to create their whole lives and now they finally get to, but you're a creator and you're a painter, but you're also a creator in an entrepreneurial lens, right? You've created this library of YouTube videos and education, so you're kind of this interesting blend of person. You're an artist and you're an entrepreneur. And a lot of the people who we are speaking to want to tap more into that artist side. They know business, but they want a little bit more of the artist. So do you have any thoughts on what you would say to them in terms of, here's how to make sure you're capturing that artistry and this innate ability to create?
Well, I think, hey, welcome back. I think your point is.
I have no idea what happened. I was just kicked out when I was really excited to ask you something.
Yeah. Well, we were getting fine. We were getting along fine without you, actually. It was
I'm sure. Yeah. Katrina and Eddie tell me that all the time.
But I think your point is really important because, if you're listening to somebody say, oh, I'm an artist and I paint, it kind of removes you from, say, someone that's a business person from, oh, well, that world lives over there. But I think your point is really important that we all have a painter really is just looking at the world through a lens of what do I find fascinating and curious, and how do I want to give expression to that? Well, when you say, oh, that's what you're doing, you realize, well, that's what any business person is doing. I mean, then you get to the point of, the artist being like, well, I'm not sure that's a good idea. And then, of course, it doesn't get very far. The same way a business person is thinking, oh, I can't make any money doing that. I don't think that'll work. And then the whole thing collapses, right? So the curiosity and the engagement with the world is central, and the courage to say your vision has some substance. I mean, you might be deluded, but the courage to at least give it a try is essential. And they're exactly the same skills you need to be a painter, right?
You know, Ian, we two related questions. One is for the mini book we wrote on intellectual capital, we said there's really 5 forms of it. There's a test, like a diagnostic. There's a lens, which is exactly what you're talking about in composition, right? There are tools, brushes, paints, canvas, all that. There's wisdom, right? Which is just, hey, you got to learn how to critique. And then there's kind of the outcome, like being wise about like what the outcome is. Not that you made an amazing painting necessarily that sells for $1 bazillion. It's your self-discovery. You're trying to understand yourself and connect with others. But like what's so fascinating is that what you were describing is intellectual capital related to painting. But I think you have at least 4 out of the 5, if not all 5. I assume you get through the Ian experience of YouTube, courses, books, and all that. So it's so cool on that front. And then the second one is just like you had you showed a snow leopard, and I'm just kind of like, how did you find it? Like, I mean, obviously you're a student of learning. You are just a curious person and on a mission to kind of design your own dream career, even though you've had multiple dream careers, it would seem. Like, how did you find it?
Well, I'm always having to write, right? I'm always having to write content. And even if I'm writing it as a rough draft for video, I'm having to make, coherent thoughts that are going forward. And I've always got an idea I for years and years and years, I had this idea of writing this book, and I wrote it a couple of times and I couldn't get my head around the whole idea, and it's kind of sitting on. So I'm always thinking of another book. And I know that I was reading somebody, and I couldn't tell you who it was, that recommended it. And there was another book about tiny thunder or something, somebody that sort of talks about metaphors and something. And it's like, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but if the metaphors don't come to you, it just stops you immediately, right? So, I mean, my wife loves me, but one things she sort of says is, do you really need to buy any more books? It's like they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And I'm a sucker for buying more books. I discovered libraries recently. I mean, I'd never really thought about them before.
Just in case you wanted the hot tip, libraries exist in 2025.
Exactly. And they don't always have what you want, but they often do. And so I just bought it because, if you take the main, the idea, the content, let's say I were going to write this new book, I would need to think through it as carefully. And I didn't have to think through it that carefully with Mastering Composition. It was kind of already there. But I would have to think this thing through. And, your book is designed in many respects as, well, they're business books in a way. I mean, you want business books that are going to keep going. I'm not writing a business book. I'm writing more of a book on beauty, let's say. But it doesn't mean that a lot of the principles you've got there wouldn't be relevant, obviously, But so that's how I own it. I mean, I have a lot of books that I bought I haven't read. I will also tell you that.
That you're clearly a book super consumer.
I am guilty of that as well.
That's
I can buy them a lot faster than I can read them.
I'm a sucker for, and the wish to read book list is bigger than the read books, but I love books. So
yeah.
Christopher, I would love to circle back to what you were going to ask, and I am conscious of time, Ian, if you have.
Yeah, I'll make it a little quicker. I'd be curious, do you have any sense, Ian, of what percentage of your audience is not a painter, but is somebody who loves paintings and loves the creative process and consumes some level of your content? Yes, I'm not a drummer. And yesterday I watched an incredible video from this outfit called Drumeo on you and I both being from Canada, where they break down what Neil Peart does in Tom Sawyer, and why it's such a legendary song, and why it might be the #1 air drum song in the world. And I just found it fun and fascinating. And I'm not a drummer. I'm not aspiring to be a drummer, and I'm never going to be a drummer, but I loved it. And I love this company. They're actually out of Toronto as well, called Drumeo, because their content about drumming and music is just really compelling to me. Do you have a sense of how many of your folks in your world may be a little bit like me with Drumeo, or
I see zero.
Zero? Oh,
I say
interesting.
zero because the whole premise of what I'm teaching is you learn to draw from experience, from practice. So if if that video was saying, okay, so I want you to repeat this pattern, okay, repeat this pattern now, okay, now 10 minutes later, okay, now repeat that pattern, you might not have been quite so interested because it's not, you're not trying to engage with it, right? So like if I created a YouTube channel about how the artist looks at art, and I went to a museum and said, I want to look at this Rembrandt, and I want to show you how an artist looks at a painting, not how a critic or an art historian looks at a painting. Because you hear in art history books, the art historian and the art critic talks about it. It's like they're looking through a window pane. They're talking about all these biographical details going on in their life at the same time. It's completely distracted from what's actually happening. And there is the traces of the actual paint on the canvas and what they're doing that is real and tangible. Well, I could imagine lots of people being interested in that. You wouldn't need to be a painter. Lots of people go to museums. But my courses, no one would take it. After week 1, they'd be out. Because the first
I think you might have an interesting idea, because if you created a program on how to appreciate art or paintings through the lens of a painter, I would buy.
My wife would take that in a second. I would probably give it to her.
I mean, listen.
Come on, Ian, you gotta produce
ideas
more
are
content,
cheap.
Ian.
No. Ideas are cheap. I mean, actually making that thing so it worked. Oh my God, I know how much work it would be to do it well.
Amen to that. It is.
Yeah.
We understand, because Eddie and I show up with a new idea every 15 minutes, and Katrina plays
like,
whack-a-mole with us.
How would you like to create this today? And I'm like, how would you like to create this today?
Yeah, there was somebody that said, I was just reading about the idea of ideas. There's ideas worth $1, and then there's ideas worth all the way up to $1 million. And then there's execution worth $1 and execution worth up to $1 million. And if you don't put those two bottom ones together and they don't go, then, the ideas are not the issue. I wish you could, see, the thing is, you could say, well, I'm the idea man. I don't mean you. I mean, me. I mean, like any one of us. I'm the idea man. I'll give you ideas and then I want 50%. And it's like, no. It doesn't work that way.
It takes a lot of doing.
The execution is brutal. Because it's like that thing I was saying before about running workshops. You've got to anticipate all these problems in advance and figure all these different things out. And and here's the thing. The first few times you do it, it's kind of fascinating because it's like, yeah, I could think this and this and this, and I have to learn that. Okay, and you put it's fascinating. But by the time you've done it 4, 5, 6 times, year after year, you're not learning anything new. I mean, I said this thing about not teaching these courses anymore live. And one of my students said, well, the student learns more, or the teacher learns more than the student. And I was thinking, lady, come on. I mean, it's like, at a certain point, yes, as you're learning, and absolutely, the first 10 years of teaching those workshops, absolutely. But at a certain point, to the extent that you're now interested in it, right? If you're not interested in expanding it, it's sort of ossified, and you need to, okay, maybe I've got something else here. I don't know what's next, but it's not continuing this workshop in its current function.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that as people who have done what we do and have a level of expertise in something that's been going on for the better part of 30 years. I took a break from category design. I was like, I do not want to sit down with an executive team and go, like, I don't want to go to the meeting. Right? I just don't want to go to the fucking meeting.
I'm assuming we can joke like that here, and you don't take offense. No, it's quite right. And the thing is, I mean, I don't know how old you are, Chris, but I'm 73. And like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I'm ready. Retirement makes no sense to me. But the idea of being in the studio trying to figure out if I have something really worthwhile giving expression to, I'd like to find that out in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And, I can't put it off another 5 years thinking, oh, another 5 years will be fine. And then I can do it.
Right.
It's not, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but you
I'm
get
57.
What's that?
57.
Oh, and the two of you down below, I mean, my goodness, 20s, right?
I'm 50, actually.
No, but
And-
I remember being 50. I remember
Yes.
how young and vital and just getting started I felt. And the only thing what I don't feel now is that I've got an infinite amount of time to do what's next. I don't feel like my capacity for doing things has diminished. I just feel the amount of time to do it's
Yeah.
like, no.
Most precious commodity.
There can't, yeah. And it just becomes incredibly more compelling.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what's next? Because like that idea of a TV show of how the artist looks, perfectly good idea. At 50, maybe it's a good idea. Now, bad idea.
Ain't doing it. I have a friend who recently
Apologies,
turned.
I have to drop, but Ian, I love this. I can't wait to see your own paintings, and I won't bother you. But I will definitely buy your course for sure. I think my wife would totally dig it. So, anyway,
And Eddie, it was great talking with you.
same.
See ya.
I have a friend, Ian, who recently turned 85, and she's incredible. She's vital. She's alive. She's just an extraordinary human being. And we were talking about these sorts of things. And she said to me, well, Chris, in 15 years, I'm 100. And she's like, I can't wrap my head around that. So like, there's things I got to get done.
Yeah, and you realize at 100, or I sort of think like, oh, I don't know, you live to your early 90s, let's say. I mean, I belong to this tennis club, and I play with a group called the Cronies. Everybody doubles. Everybody's over 65, and most of them are in their 80s, and they're playing well. I mean, some of them don't run as fast as they used to, obviously, but they're out there having fun, and they're playing, and it has sort of like, oh, okay, you got at least 10 more years of playing tennis. There's a couple of guys there, like one guy's 91, and he really doesn't run very fast. But I mean, you realize there's, I don't know, I don't know, when I was young, somebody that was 50, somebody was 60, he was old. She was old. They were old.
Yeah.
And they started to act old. They did all these
in their 50s, for
yeah,
sure.
They started adding these layers of what oldness meant. And so by the time they're 60, they're sort of like this. And now, man, people are 85 years old and they're not dying easily. Do not go gentle into that whatever night.
Dark night, yeah.
And,
exactly.
And it's not I don't know. I mean, I take care of myself, relatively speaking, but I'm not sort of trying to phase off death in any way. But you realize we still have juice here. You guys got tons of juice left. Whoa, man.
Well, we are I have more juice than most, and we acknowledge that. But it's really interesting to talk to you, Ian, because you've had such a long career, and like you just said, I don't really like to think about retirement. I don't think about it that way. And I think a lot of people who are going to listen to this podcast and who follow Category Pirates, they also don't think about retirement that way, right? They want to find something that they just really love to do and do that until as long as they possibly can. But what I'm getting from you, which I think is really interesting, is maybe, and depending on the person, you'll hit this point where you want to change your strategy a little bit. You go from, I'm teaching these workshops in person, I've got a ton of energy, I'm traveling over to Europe all the time, I'm doing all these logistics, to, okay, now I'm in this other phase of my life. I got married, I want to stick around more, I'm going to transition into YouTube and focusing on courses and running that. And now you're like, okay, I did that for a while and I'm good. So now I'm going to transition into this next phase of my career. So I think it's really interesting to think about this in phases and try to design your career and your work for that time of your life and what works for you.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, as you say. I mean, if you're working for a corporation and you're sort of having to do all the work within that bubble, and it's taking up most of your time, and you haven't got something that you're saying. I mean, because an entrepreneur basically is saying, for better or for worse, I'm making my own bubble, and it's going to work or not work. And I guess people get tired of it and say, well, all I want to do now is go sailing, and I'm going to sail around the world or something. But the thing that I want to do is to make paintings, right? This whole thing has come out of the paintings. So the idea of retiring is sort of meaningless. It's like, retire from what? It just sort of bubbles out. I can't stop it. So I may as well just direct it a little bit more intelligently. But I would say that, the last 4 or 5 years, I made a lot of money. I mean, I never made much money before. I've never really focused on making money. I sort of had a 4-wheel drive truck, and it was beat up, and that, it didn't care. Rented an apartment. My lifestyle was pretty simple. And wasn't compelled to try to change it particularly, but it's kind of intriguing, a little addictive, I will say, to make a lot of money, because then you sort of say, okay, I'm not going to teach these courses anymore, and for a year or two, I might not make anything. I have no idea what's going to happen. But it kind of makes me feel good to know that I could do it. I was able to do that, in terms of our culture and success and money and all the trappings that go, you realize I can do that. Dang, I can do that. But it doesn't mean that much to me in the sense that, well, I would continue doing it for its own sake. There's a very clear picture in my mind. That's a poor trade-off for the years I've got left.
Say a little more about that, Ian. I want to understand what you're telling us.
Well, I'm saying that I'm interested in making paintings, right? Because I think I'm a painter. Maybe it'll move into books. Maybe it'll move into an email, a newsletter, or something like that. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll create a new course, but it'll all be contained like that. But when I get out of this current set of courses, I don't want to be having money being the motivating factor of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I don't think I've got enough years left to make that. I'm not saying I couldn't use more between now and the time I die, but I don't want that to be the motivating factor anymore. I know I can do it. That was a nice piece, but I just have other things that interest me way more. So, that thing of making money is so central to our culture, and it's very sticky. But I'm just at a point in my life, in terms of my age and the things I want to do and how long I'm going to last, I don't want it to be anywhere near the motivating factor.
It's so interesting you say that, because I grew up with very little, single mother, struggle. I have 5 or 6 learning differences. I didn't graduate. You would understand CEGEP, so I didn't graduate from CEGEP, which in the U.S., of course, is high school, last 2 years of high school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I started in business, it was an act of desperation, because nobody would hire me to do shit other than manual labor. And, by the time I was 40, I was financially free. And it's weird, because when you grow up, struggle with lack of money and all that, it's a constant presence. You don't even realize it's just always there. And then it's gone, and you sort of go, who am I now? And then you go, hey, wait a minute. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, with mostly whoever I want. That can be, and I know nobody has sympathy for it, nor should they. But it can also be a little bit confronting. It's like, okay, you've been an artist your whole life. You did well, but you weren't wealthy. Now you've achieved a level of wealth, which allows for a level of financial agency. You always chose agency, it sounds like, to pursue what you wanted. I'm just curious, sort of from an identity perspective, how it might have changed you to have kind of ticked the financial box and now be free to not even think about it.
Well, one of the things that's interesting currently about the fine art, the contemporary art world, is, I'm a representational painter, right? If you look at my paintings, you say, oh, it's a landscape, it's still. If you can tell exactly what it was, it represents what the world looks like. And it's kind of you look at it, it wouldn't look that different from a painting from 150 years ago, right? I mean, I don't have some sort of impressionist style, but I'm just painting the world. And in the contemporary art world, anything goes. Anything goes. There's just, it's like that thing of 4-chord progressions to make a hit song. They've just taken all the guardrails off. There are no guardrails. So you walk in the studio and think, woo, what am I going to do? And it's like, unless you start putting some constraints on there, you're screwed, because it's like, I don't know, I can do anything. And you'll do
If I
one thing
poop on
today,
this canvas, is it art?
right? Or a couple of bags of Cheetos on the gallery floor. I mean, that's actually happened. So at what point? And you hear these
Or
stories.
didn't that banana sell for some giant amount of money
Yeah,
not
and the
too
guy
long
that
ago?
bought it ate the banana. It's like, dang. So, and you hear those stories about pieces that the the cleanup crew in the morning just take it and throw it in the garbage because they thought it was garbage, right? They're a little confused about what's art and what isn't. So, I mean, that's sort of a different topic, but I now have to decide, like, okay, what are those constraining guide rails? Because I'm not sure I want to keep painting the way I paint. I'm not sure it interests me anymore. I've kind of been doing what I've been doing so long. It comes from it comes from the Group of Seven, really. My dad was a painter. Group of Seven is a group of Canadian painters that we sort of became, were hugely famous, I suppose, in the 1920s and 30s. But I don't know what I'm going to do yet. But the thing is, it's like I've been focused like this on the constraints of my business and producing work within that confine so long now. I mean, 4 or 5 years. And I suppose tangentially from the years before that, in the sense that if you're teaching a workshop and you have to do a demonstration painting this scene, you got to have your chops up, because if you haven't painted this, you've just been pouring Cheetos on the floor, you're going to be in trouble, right? So I'm always sort of, for 25 years, I was resuscitating my chops so that I could always do the demonstrations. And you really don't want a demonstration to fail in front of all your students. You really, really don't. So I don't know what I'm going to do next.
And how does that feel for you, Ian?
Well, it doesn't really feel like anything, because I haven't got any time to think about it. I mean, I've got a few months off this spring till August, and then I have to start gearing up for the brushwork course. And then I've got a little bit of time between that and beginning of January. And then that course will end the end of February. So that's, almost a year away before I can just put my feet up. And, I've got operation managers and TAs, and I got to create the course to be evergreen. And when will I do that? And who knows how long. Even digging out of a situation now that I've clearly decided I'm going to dig out of, it's probably going to take me 2 years. But, piece by piece. It's not like one day I'm going to walk into the studio and say, oh, now I'm finally free. Because I think, to your point a little bit, what do I do? I don't know what I'm going to do. I could see that happening for several months. No idea.
No, I mean, the first time I retired, I was 38 years old. And, I spent a couple of years skiing and surfing and doing all sorts of fun things, and a little bit of work, a little bit of advising and investing. But I came to realize pretty quickly that as much as I love to ski and surf and travel the world and mountain bike and do all these things, which I do, it's wonderful. When you've achieved any level of capability or mastery in something, or the way I would describe it is, there's certain things that own me that I don't own, category design being the main one. It's kind of who you are. And so, and I was taught this by a dear friend, he when I used the word retired, I was retired or semi-retired or things along these lines, he would get really angry with me. And this was not an angry man at all. And he would say, you're not allowed to use the R word. It's bullshit. And he said to me, you're a teacher. That's what you are now, and so forth and so on. And so it is an interesting thing for people who've been successful, who've been driven, who've been driving their whole lives and building and creating and doing all these things, to wake up one day and realize, I can do anything I want. What do I do?
Well, your point there about category design owns you. That's exactly it. That's what I'm saying. I mean, for another year or two, my company owns me. Even though I make it, I could quit. Well, I couldn't quit until next week, but I could just say, screw it, I'm not doing it anymore, and everything can just go to, I don't care. It would be stupid, and so I'm not going to do it. But in that sense, my category owns me until I can slowly extricate myself from it. But it's pretty clear the
and you'll never extricate yourself from it completely. That's what I learned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have
and so I surrendered to it, and it's a sweet surrender.
There's a radical idea.
No, but like when you realize that you've been working on a set of things that really matter to you for in my case 35 years. I started my first company at 18. Entrepreneurship, creativity in business, creating new categories, creating different futures, and now helping others do those things. And now creator capitalist, which is sort of, if you will, personal category design, if you will, particularly in the age of AI. These are things that I'm obsessed with, that I love, that give me a reason to connect with people. And like you said, have people come up to you and go, holy shit, your work changed my life, and all of that. And it's like, well, I like to drink whiskey and smoke pot, but like, I'm going to drink whiskey and smoke pot all day, or I'm going to surf all day, or I'm going to ski all day. I tried that. It's really fun.
Right.
But after a little while, you're like, and then the thing that owns you starts banging on you again.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Well, so you're using it in a slightly different way than I was. I was looking at the current business I have as owning me, but you're actually talking about dharma in a way. Do you know the word dharma? I mean, it's like, that's the thing you're born to do. And you could spend a whole life not doing it because your father said you should be a lawyer or something and you're miserable. But everybody's got a dharma. It's like our natural reason for being. And I think your category, how you're describing category, is your dharma. You're just doing what you have to do. It's your
very much so. Spiritual people, and it sounds corny to some, would call it a calling.
Well, exactly. It's exactly that. And you can't ignore it. Well, you certainly can ignore it. And you probably ignore it at your peril.
Which I did.
And lots of people do.
I did. And luckily I have enough people around me who love me and who can whack me in the head and said, what you're doing is insane. That is to say, what you're not doing is insane.
Right. So in that respect, that category, and whether it's some aspect of teaching, it probably is. I mean, it would be hard for me to say I'm not a teacher. I have an email list of 30,000 people. I realized, well, I could come back to that content word again. I don't know. I could tell them what I'm thinking and share that with them. And it's just, it's more modest, but it'll keep something going until something else happens, until the next thing happens,
And we would encourage you to do that. We have done similar things. And the other thing I'd say to you, this has been a profound experience for us. When you are an important person in people's lives at scale, thanks to the digital world or just the publishing world, there's something really powerful about that. And people get used to, particularly with a podcast or a regular newsletter, they get used to hearing from you on a fairly regular basis. And I didn't understand this until years ago, Ian. I was on a speaking book tour, and I was traveling around the country, and I would give a speech, and then I was the show pony, and I would sign autographs. And I likened it to being Santa Claus, the line of folks. And I'm sure you've had similar experiences. And I was doing this event in New York, and this guy showed up early where we're doing the sound check and, all the things that you do before a speaking event. And he shows up a little early and he says, hey, Christopher, I want to introduce myself. And he shakes my hand. Hi, nice to meet you, Jimmy, or whatever his name was. And he said, look, I want to tell you something. I know this is going to sound crazy. I'm not a crazy person, but I just want to tell you how it is for me. And he says, you and I get together on a regular basis. And we talk about amazing things, and we learn and discover stuff, and we meet interesting people, and we drink bourbon and IPAs together, and we have a great time, and we have an awesome relationship. And I just want you to know I really appreciate it. And no, I'm not crazy. I know you don't know me, and that's not how it is for you. And it was kind of a very fun conversation, if you know what I mean. And it stuck with me ever since then, because I thought about myself. Somebody who didn't have a formal education, the authors that I sort of leaned on, I could only learn by doing, reading, and seeking out mentors. Well, the authors and the mentors made all the difference. I mean, the doing is really important too, but without those, you can't sort of move forward in any meaningful way, or at least takes a lot longer. And I remembered my relationship with those people, and I felt the same way about them. And I have those people in my life today who I don't know that I feel like this guy
Right.
expressed with me. And so all I'm saying to you in that regard, Ian, is there's a relationship there with your 200,000 and with your 30,000 and however many. I mean, there's probably, and the numbers are way bigger than that. There's probably 1 million people you've touched in reality because of the WOM. Those are the only ones that are showing up in the numbers. It could easily be a million or somewhere approaching that. And so I'd encourage you not to disappear completely for those people, because you're a friend of theirs in their life.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And I think responsibility is an interesting word in that context, because I guess I feel that, I mean, I feel like YouTube a little less, because I don't know why. I mean, it's a social media thing, and it served a function for me. That's the only advertising I did. I've never paid a dime in money. Spent a lot of time, right? That currency. But in terms of money, I've never spent any money on advertising. YouTube did it all for me. So it played a role for these courses. But now that I'm getting out of the courses, it no longer has a function for me. And I'm saying to people that watch the YouTube videos, hey, come over to my email list. If you want more, we're going to do it there. And, whoever comes will come.
And that's fair, I think. That's totally fair.
Yeah. And that's one thing about YouTube, is every single YouTube video I made, it's all up there. They can all go and see it and use it in any way they want. It's not like I'm taking them down.
Yeah, exactly. And you have somebody could achieve a high level of mastery in composition with your free YouTube videos, and that'll be true forever.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing you did.
Well, Ian, I think I see what you're saying. And one thing that we've done in the past when we're changing directions or changing courses, or we kind of went from publishing one mini book a week on our Substack to launching our academy and our courses, was just letting people know what we were doing and being honest about it and saying, we're on to this next phase and we've noticed this, and this is where we're at in our lives and our business, and we're going in this new direction. So if you're interested at all in that new direction, stick around and stick with us. And I think people appreciate that level of honesty and openness, because we're all human, right? Sometimes when you see people on YouTube and you're so used to following them, you forget that people have other things going on in their lives, right?
Yeah.
They're stepping back, they're taking care of their kids, they're doing this, they're doing that. And if I see someone who I follow pretty consistently say something like that to me, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it, right?
Yeah.
And I still want to follow them. And it makes me almost want to follow them even more, because you see that human side of the people on the other side of the screen. And
it's a good point. And the point is that we do pivot, deeply and internally. I mean, there can be business pivots, but we can have deep pivots inside of us of new directions. And, you might pivot in that new direction and lose a third of them, but another third will come from someplace else because you're now talking their language.
Absolutely. Well,
but this has been great. It's been very interesting, engaging, and simple to kind of keep everything going. It's been really fun.
Yeah. Well, we're excited.
You're legendary, and you're really inspiring. Congratulations on a legendary life so far.
Well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate. I just actually emailed someone who is having trouble crafting. He's a brilliant guy, taught at RISD and MIT for 20 years, design. And he's trying to craft, now that he's not in the academic sector, he's trying to craft how he says what he does. And he's having trouble with the words. And I just sent him to your 7-day free thing to say, at least have a look here. I think these people could help you figure out what the words are that would be. I think what you're doing is really interesting. I don't feel like I want to go and do it. I'm trying to get out of it. If 5 years ago I might have said, hey, but sounds
well. And if you ever feel compelled, if you ever feel compelled to write something on the connection between your work and category design, we would love that. But we don't want to give you to-dos.
I think
and I don't want to.
I understand.
Yeah. Languaging is our version of composition, right? you get the
Yeah.
words right,
Yeah, languaging is
everything
exactly.
else comes. So that was a pretty interesting aha parallel for me. So
Yeah.
thank you, Ian. We appreciate it. I'm
Yeah.
going to